what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Footcandle Films. Film news and reviews from two guys who really like movies.
This episode is brought to you by the Footcandle Film Society. For a schedule of upcoming screenings and membership information, visit the Society's website at www.footcandle.org.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Footcandle Films here on themesh.tv. Chris Fry is right across this table from me. My name is Alan Jackson. Chris, how are you doing today?
I am doing excellent.
Are you?
Yes.
Good. We had a good couple nights of some film screenings. I know it's a film that we'll be talking about a little bit later in the show here in a moment. So we've kept busy this week, but we're here together to record our show. This episode today, we're going to be doing two film reviews: Bridge of Spies, the latest Steven Spielberg film, and then a documentary called Finders Keepers, which we will tell you all about in a little bit. Nice little fun, lighthearted family story involved in that documentary.
Right.
So two film reviews we'll be conducting here shortly. We'll ease into some movie news shortly after that, and then we'll wrap up the show in our traditional fashion by giving you a recommendation for the month. Just a film that we think you ought to check out. It could be one that maybe you've missed in the past, maybe one that's available now to check out in theaters or online. Just a film we think you ought to turn an eye to and give it a chance if you haven't already. So, Chris, with all that being said, we've laid out the agenda. We know where we're going on this. Let's cross the Bridge of Spies and get started.
Okay.
We've got a Soviet spy.
But there's a wrinkle.
They got our spy pilot. Or the head full of classified information. The Russians want their man back before he cracks. We want you to negotiate the swap.
I'm an insurance lawyer. I'm not sure I want to pick that up.
Are you good at what you do?
This will be a first for the both of us.
Chris, in the latest Steven Spielberg film, Bridge of Spies, we have Tom Hanks, who is kind of becoming the Steven Spielberg go-to guy now.
Sure.
Scorsese's got Leonardo DiCaprio.
True.
I think Spielberg's got Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
Fair to say. I know they've worked together on, of course, Saving Private Ryan, The Terminal,
Catch Me If You Can.
And now they've got Bridge of Spies. But we have Tom Hanks playing a real-life character. You know, this is a true story here. He's playing James Donovan, who is a lawyer who's recruited to help defend a Soviet spy, played by Mark Rylance, playing Rudolph Abel, a convicted Soviet spy in America. And, you know, the government wants to put on a show. They want to show that, hey, we're actually adhering to our Constitution and we're going to give them due rights and put them in. But they obviously know that they want to get this guy convicted.
Oh, yeah.
So let's ask James Donovan just to put on the show of, yes, we went through the right due process, but ultimately the guy's going to get convicted. Well, James Donovan gets involved a little deeper than he maybe expected and actually is instrumental in not only truly trying to defend or give at least a fair approach to the defense for the Soviet spy, but also becomes integral in the possible negotiation of a swap of a prisoner that is being held in Germany, an American prisoner that may be eligible for a swap with this. It becomes a very political, a lot of intrigue, a lot of tense moments as well. But the question I've got for you, Chris, is when this film was announced, it didn't receive a whole lot of fanfare. It's not like everybody was just chomping at the bit waiting for this new Spielberg film. It came out in the theaters. It's done fine business. It's not been a bomb by any means, but it hasn't been like a blockbuster either. It's just done good, adequate business. I don't hear a lot of people coming out of the movie theater just glowing about this film. I don't hear like over-the-top rave reviews. I don't even think I've heard anything about Oscar buzz with this film. But all that being said, I mean, does that matter? Did you enjoy the film? Was it a good, solid film, or did it just seem very, very slight in the grand scheme of things?
You know, Bridge of Spies is an odd movie to begin with. I mean, it's a Spielberg movie. It's World War II, so it's kind of familiar territory. He's working with a familiar actor, Tom Hanks. But I don't know if it was the Coen brothers coming in and helping out with the script that maybe kind of adjusted things and maybe made it kind of strange. I liked the movie.
Okay.
It's kind of a tough movie because it's not a courtroom drama because he does leave the courtroom and go outside, but it feels like a courtroom drama. To me, it felt like a John Grisham novel. And we've seen so many of those that you kind of know, okay, here's the start of the story, here's the end of the story. And you kind of, it's very predictable. Mm-hmm. And even, this is based in history, so it's predictable because it's written down in history books. But, it's an aspect of history I didn't really realize how spies operated, and it goes a lot deeper than that. I guess probably in real life, if you read the spy books, this or the history that this is based on. Interesting concept, but it strays away from details that probably would have made this a lot more interesting. Mm-hmm. That being said, I did like the movie. The interesting part to me was, which is in contrast to what I thought it would be, I thought the interesting part of this movie would be once he got to Russia and started the hostage negotiation.
Right.
Okay? I thought all the stuff that would take place on American soil about him defending the spy to begin with, I thought that would be kind of boring because we've seen it 100 million times before, like lawyer stuff. But what I was surprised at is I actually found the stuff that took place on American soil more interesting because Tom Hanks had to defend what he wanted to do. He actually really wanted to give it the old try and actually defend this person, whereas he was basically being used as a paper tiger, like, oh, yeah, you're a patsy. Stand up here and try to defend this guy, or we're going to mow him over. And he's like, no. I'm actually going to do what you guys are saying you're doing.
No, we're going to do what our
for the
Constitution tells us to do,
and it's like, okay, he is a spy, but the point is I'm still giving him a fair chance. And
sure.
And even the tagline on the poster that was at the movie theater, which I can't remember now, it made it sound like this was going to be nothing but a kind of go America, rah, 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 and type of movie. And I was like, well, why didn't they release it, around Independence Day or something like that, But it's much more deeper than that, about standing up for what you believe in and trying to do what you think is right. Mm-hmm. And I have to give the movie credit for that. And I actually enjoyed that kind of like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be.
Right.
Now, that being said, here's the old but.
Yes.
But when it got to Russia, stuff that you would think would be very exciting because it would be very Born Supremacy or, Mission Impossible or James Bond-ish, where he's like dealing with spies and having to negotiate. And there's all this like cat and mouse game. Just didn't really feel, I don't, the whole movie is a lot of talking.
Yes.
Not a lot of action. But that part just somehow fell flat. And I don't know, the movie is kind of long for me. It's over 2 hours. So maybe by that point I was just kind of like, okay, wrap it up. I don't know.
Well, I don't think it was that. I have a lot of your same sentiments. I did like the film, ultimately. Okay. I did like it. I think there's more redeeming qualities for it than not. It was a very slight film, and that's where I was kind of lobbing that up for you in the intro, because I do feel like it's very slight. I feel like there's a much deeper story every step of the way that I would love to get into. But unfortunately, we are given a very high-level, cursory storyline. I, too, found the portion, the first half in America with the defense of the Soviet spy to be more interesting. Mm-hmm. I actually got a little lost when they got to Germany and to try to negotiate the whole swap.
Sure.
And I'll get into one of my main big disagreements with the film in a moment about that point. I know
where you might be going.
And I agree, too, that the end is not... When you hear Spielberg doing a political thriller and all this, you think it's going to be this real ratcheted up tension and emotion. And the ending, I think they tried to plug that in, but it wasn't really there. And it didn't need to be there. It was not meant to be a nail biter suspense film, which is, I think, when you watch the trailer, they really try to play it up like it is.
Right.
The ending, yes, has a little moment of tense drama to it. Very slight, though. Very simple. And you still know what's going to happen. It's almost like the talk about what could happen was more dramatic than what actually did happen.
Sure.
Overall, though, I mean, I still admire the film for not caving in and saying we've got to like really ratchet up action and we've got to have like a car chase at the end or something like that. No, it was pretty much, okay, we're going to do this action. We're going to do this swap. Now, there's a chance it may not work, but in the end, it kind of goes the way you expect it to go. Mm-hmm. So no real surprises.
Sure.
So I guess that's one thing. I think we're a culture that we're expected to be edge of our seat or surprises or twist or whatever. And this movie had none of those. It was pretty much, here's the story. They're going to follow this path. A couple little moments where it maybe change gears slightly, but not really anything dramatically, not anything that threw you off. And then it's going to end and kind of nice, simple. And there we go. We're done. The things I will say I really did like about this film. First and foremost, the actor who I was not familiar with at all, Mark Rylance, playing Rudolph Abel, the Soviet spy. oh my gosh, that was one of the best performances I've seen this year.
I think he was the best thing about the film. I agree. I was all in on him, and I think that may be a lot why when we got to Russia I wasn't as interested, because he was kind of disappears because he's stuck back in America, obviously. And I loved his performance.
It was just, well, I got to tell you, the opening scene of this film I thought was glorious. And I guess I'm more disappointed that none of the rest of the film lived up to that first 10 minutes.
The suspense and tension, you're talking about his arrest. Yes, that was
It
genius.
was a almost dialogue-free scene where you're following him along in his day, but you're also realizing that there are moments where, you're picking up on what his profession really is and what's going on. And just the way they built that whole scene up was so masterfully done.
It was well done.
It actually got me really excited for the rest of the film. Not to say the rest of the film was a big letdown, but it's just it never matched that virtuoso filmmaking that I thought the first 10 minutes had.
Well, and this makes me realize, or I want to bring up, that Steven Spielberg, he's a good director. He's made a lot of movies, and people just kind of discount him, me included. I don't really run out to see a Spielberg picture. Not that he makes bad movies, but he tends to go for more of the blockbusters or stuff that I'm just not. And the subject matter, like I never saw War Horse. Never.
I've never seen War Horse. I've never seen The Terminal.
I have seen The Terminal, and I liked The Terminal.
With the last 10 to 12 years of Spielberg films, I just have not gotten any heightened emotion for whatsoever.
No, neither have I. Yeah. The Terminal was probably the last one that I can recall off the bat that I really liked.
Okay.
But I like to Catch Me If You Can. That's probably the last
Catch Me If You Can was probably the last Spielberg film that I really thought was a great Spielberg film.
But I think what kind of nagged at me was that same thing where there have been reports supposedly with like when he came in to do Jurassic Park 2, because he did that one as well, right?
Yes.
That he basically kind of phoned it in and he wasn't really directing stuff. Who knows if that's true? It's kind of urban legend type stuff. With this film, that first scene, I was like, wow, Spielberg really is, he's still got it. He's such a master. And then not long after, after that, it kind of falls away, and then I feel like, okay, is he now phoning it in for the rest of the film? Not that, the rest of the film still has some flourishes and touches, but that masterpiece of that opening scene, those opening moments, really made me think, wow, this is one of the greatest filmmakers working today. He's still got it.
Yeah. I think anytime Spielberg's in his wheelhouse now of doing the historical drama films.
Sure.
And I think that's just a passion for him now. I think it's obvious that he puts more passion into those films than he does the more commercial ones.
Sure.
I look at probably the last big commercial film he did was the last Indiana Jones film, which was not that great.
No.
He did Lincoln before this film, which obviously
passion thing.
A lot of people really liked. I thought it was good. I didn't think it was a masterpiece, but I thought it was good.
And he did. Now he may have just executive produced, but it had his name all over it. That 10-10, the animated.
Right.
film.
He did. He did not direct that. I don't believe.
Okay.
I think was that Peter Jackson that directed that.
Maybe, but he had
he was like an executive producer, I believe.
Right.
But really, his last 10 years have been more of these historical drama. Even going back to Munich and going back to Amistad.
Yeah.
I think that's where his passion is. And I do think this film shows some of that passion. I think he's really enamored by the story. I think he's enamored by the history behind it. I think he's absolutely enamored by Tom Hanks' character, James Donovan.
Yeah.
I think he probably sees James Donovan, if I had to guess, Spielberg probably sees James Donovan as one of his personal heroes. That would be my guess. Because here's a guy that I'm going to do what we're supposed to do.
Right.
And I'm not going to bow down to the people around me that tell me I should just let it go or I should let it slide.
Right.
And I think Spielberg really respects that kind of character. And I think that's the kind of person he loves to make a movie about.
Right.
He made it about Lincoln.
Yeah.
He's made it about Donovan here. So
I think one of the ways we mentioned briefly that the Coens had to do with the script, the one time that I felt like I could see their like sense of wit kind of coming through was, and there again, maybe it's why it made him my favorite character. The Mark Reliance character of the spy, Rudolph Abel, is when he says a couple of times, would it make a difference? Like he's kind of asked questions by Tom Hanks' character, like, aren't you concerned about, aren't you concerned about this, that people think that
he's like nervous or,
he's like, you don't seem nervous. He's like, well, would it
matter?
Would it help?
Would it help?
Yeah. And it's just like, those kind of, and the way he says it, the way he delivers it, his eyes, it's just, man, and I think that's kind of a coincidence. Like, well, would it matter? Would it help? It's just that's just genius.
I was a little let down
stuff.
though. That I agree with that point. And there's a couple other moments of some of the dialogue between Donovan and Abel that I thought was good, and I could tell a little bit of that Coen brother dialogue flair to it, but
Sure.
it was really slight. I mean, I just really didn't. The dialogue didn't grab me as much as I wished it could have in a film like this that is so dialogue heavy.
Sure.
So let me move on to some of my misgivings.
Okay.
I think Tom Hanks is fine. I think he's very good in the role. It's actually one of the better Tom Hanks roles I've seen him play in a little while.
Okay.
It's a very typical Tom Hanks role. He's not stretching a whole lot, but it's good.
But
he plays
good.
it really good.
He's kind of a modern day Jimmy Stewart or something like that, where he just gets these roles.
My problem with his character, though, and it's not a fault of Hanks, it's the writing, is I just really had a hard time swallowing the jump from him being hesitant to take the case because he knows it's kind of a setup situation. He knows he's going to be lambasted in the media. He knows it's going to be bad. It could look bad for his family.
Right.
And all of a sudden, after one dialogue with Abel, it seems like he's on board. He's ready to go full tilt to defend this guy. Okay. That I can go with the film on that jump.
Sure.
His family gets put in danger in a couple situations, some very threatening situations that really scare his entire family.
Right.
Doesn't seem to faze him, which again, okay, I'm still with the film. Where it lost me though is he gets to Germany to negotiate this trade.
Right.
And he finds out that there's another prisoner, a younger kid, trapped, and he all of a sudden just flips on. It's like, I want him too. And at that point, I'm just like, okay, let me just back up for a minute. Your family's in danger. You're personally in some level of danger where you are right now too.
Right.
You've already gone through all these hurdles to get your main prisoner to trade with an American prisoner that you're trying to help. But now just because you hear in passing about this other one, you're willing to almost throw all that possibly away to try to get this other person too. At that point, I just didn't see enough of the Donovan character throughout the film to make me see that he was really, honestly, that strong-willed a person that he's just going to go do it no matter what. So at that point, when that happened, I said, really? His wife and kids are already in danger. They've already been shots fired in the house and everything.
Right.
But yet he's still willing to keep pushing it. I just didn't see enough of the story telling us enough about him as a character to know that that's truly in his temperament to do.
Yeah.
So it lost me a little bit at that point.
I can see that. When that kind of subplot was introduced about the other person that was in Germany that needed to be gotten out, the other prisoner, basically, when that, or not Germany, but in, Soviet Russia or whatever, when that was introduced, I was kind of like, why are they even bothering with this? And then I get, historically it happened, but it was distracting. And I wish kind of they could have just not had that thing at all and just concentrated on the swap for swap.
Granted, that was the true story.
Right.
It did happen.
So,
I understand that you got to weave it in,
is.
but it just seemed a little forced in there.
Yeah.
And I guess the connection, I guess I needed to see a little more of a connection why Hanks was willing to possibly jeopardize everything he'd worked toward to try to also shoehorn in this other kid, a kid he's never met. Right. Kid he knew nothing about except what this one person told him in like a 30-second blip. That was my whole kind of it was a little too much of a leap of faith to follow the story at that point. I really did like the part in America at the beginning, the first half with Abel and with the dialogue and what's happening with that. I lost a little interest when he went to Germany and to try to negotiate swaps and all that. It started to go a little off the rails for me. Not much, just a little bit.
Sure.
I was happy when I saw Abel back towards the end of the film, but it was a fairly brief moment. So I would have loved to explore his character more, like we did in the first half of the film.
Sure.
That's really, I think that other subplot getting shoehorned in the latter half probably was my biggest misgiving of the film, and just how quickly Donovan was able to grab a hold of that. When I think that would have been a really, really difficult thing to help us believe.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page. I will say, one of the things that I've critiqued Spielberg for, and I feel like definitely other people have, I'm not alone in it, but sometimes sentimentality gets in the way of his films. They become overly sentimental and sugary, I guess you would say. I didn't feel like this film did that. At the end of the film, as they were wrapping things up, there was a chance where there's a callback to an earlier scene where he's been on a bus or a metro train. I can't remember. And he's on that he's in that place again, and people are looking at him just like they were the first time, and feelings are a little different. And I was like, oh, here we go. This is kind of the gauzy moments that are going to drive me crazy, and it's going to, but he undercuts that by having Hanks look out the window and he sees some kids climbing over walls and stuff, being kids. But that makes Hanks recall what he saw back in Germany with the whole East and West Germany and the wall being set up. And I liked that. Kind of like, yeah, you think you're okay, but always remember this is happening. And I really appreciated that.
Well, and on that same token, I will say they had every chance, even at the very, very final scene of the film where Hanks returns home, they could have really amped up the sentimentality. And it was a very nice, pleasant ending and a little humorous ending to it where, I don't want to give it away, but basically he comes back in the house and he hasn't been able to tell his family what he was doing. And he's still not telling them, but they piece it together from what they see on the news and what they hear. And just his kind of exhaustion at that point. It was funny. Sure. I thought it worked. It was a nice, buttoned-up, cute ending to the film, and I totally bought it. I thought it was great. And again, they could have really turned up the swelling of the music and really had this powerful moment with a husband and wife embrace. And
sure,
but they didn't. They played it more for a little bit of a chuckle and a little bit of a, yeah, this probably is how he felt when he got home after the experience he'd just gone through. So I thought it was a nice ending to the film. It could have gone really, really bad, and I agree with you. I think they did a good job of keeping it under control. Okay. So Bridge of Spies, we both liked.
Yes.
It's not one of my favorite Spielberg films. I still consider it a very slight Spielberg film in his greater filmography of the 80s and early 90s. But it was a good film. It was a good entry into his filmography, I will say that. So, good. All right, so that's Bridge of Spies, still playing in movie theaters as we are recording this. Next up, let's talk about the documentary Finders Keepers.
Tonight, an unusual, disturbing discovery.
A Charlotte area man made a deal to buy a smoker at an auction. Guess what he found stuffed inside?
An amputated leg, and has turned the smoker into a tourist attraction.
The man who lost the foot in a plane crash is reportedly heading to reclaim the foot.
Not so fast, says Wisnett.
Now Wisnett's getting a lawyer.
It is making national headlines.
He's suing you for your own leg.
It is a freak show, no question.
And I turned it off. You never will know about the tragedy that this was born of.
Alan, I'm going to set up the documentary Finders Keepers by reading a brief little part from our friends over at IMDb. The description reads, Shannon Wisnett purchased a grill at an auction. Inside the grill was an amputated leg. What follows is a story centered on the enterprising Wisnett and John Wood, the man whose leg wound up in the grill due to an odd chain of events. Mm-hmm. And that's where they kind of leave it.
Yes.
Side note, IMDb does not mention this. This film takes place primarily in Maiden, North Carolina, which is geographically maybe 25 miles maybe from where we're sitting now, if that. Because we are located, Mesh Studios are in Hickory, North Carolina.
I can get to Maiden in about 20 minutes.
Alan actually attended the same high school as Shannon Wisnett.
Yes.
And did not know him apparently very well.
Not directly, no.
But so Alan knows, has an idea of some of the people that I mentioned. Alan, this documentary, since it does take place in the South, it kind of sets up an odd, quirky premise that if the film is played all over the United States, which it has been, is it a chance for people to hop on the Southern derision bandwagon and just say, look at these two idiots up on screen, what a stupid place the South must be. Is it kind of like a Duck Dynasty centered around a grill and a leg? How do you think the filmmakers did with presenting these two characters and the story?
Well, I think actually it was a strength of the film. I think you could have watched the first 15, 20 minutes of the film and gotten the impression that, yes, this is all about look how dumb these people are. Backwater country folk and some of their decisions. When you really look at the whole film and the fact that they had, you had the two main characters, but there were also several characters around them, 4 or 5 characters that probably got a lot of attention with interviews and discussion as well, that I think by the end of the film you feel are extremely strong, powerful, well-meaning people. Mm-hmm. And even the two main characters, and we'll get into more of the details here, but John Wood, Shannon Wisnett, yes, both have faults. The faults are very evident on screen. But if you watch the whole film, you also understand that both of them have some demons. Both of them have some things they're fighting against. And I think it kind of reminds you of all of human nature. You can have somebody who is a jerk, who is an idiot, who is anything else you want to label them as. There's always something that's driving that.
You're saying, and I think we're on the same page with this film. It would be too simple, and way too many documentaries or narrative films do this, where they just paint some character or a person in real life with very broad strokes and just generalize everything. Here's, a kind of quirky person who doesn't seem educated and is very loud talking. Here's somebody who was born into privilege and had a lot of money and went down the wrong path and got into drugs. And you see it and it's just like, oh, okay, whatever. And it just seems to play out. But I agree that I think the filmmakers tried to, go deeper and try to be more sensitive to both subjects and make you realize, it's more than just what it appears on the surface. Absolutely. Some funny news story that's gone in 30 seconds.
Well, it's such an interesting premise for a documentary because, yes, I'm sure you get into it and on the surface and the story itself is hilarious.
Yeah, it's
But ridiculous. I think the mother of John Wood's mother kind of sums it up in one moment where she says, you hear this story and it's a funny story until you realize it's born of tragedy. Mm-hmm. And it's like, yep, that's pretty much it. It is funny. Half the movie you're laughing because the situation is ridiculous.
Both gentlemen, Wood, who lost the leg, Sharon Wisnett, who bought the leg in a smoker
bought it at a auction. It was inside the smoker, unbeknownst to anybody.
Right.
He bought the smoker, got it home, opened it up. There's the amputated foot that John Wood had been keeping around.
Both gentlemen are excellent storytellers.
Yes.
In their own right. Both people could be the focus of their own documentary,
Absolutely.
Just them. But as Wood points out at one point, what would he be without Wisnett? Because he's like the man. I don't know. He's like, I've heard people say that they have their own twin in the world. Well, I don't know about that, but this guy's like my own personal Satan. He's like the complete opposite of me.
My own little Antichrist.
Right, Antichrist. Yeah. And I think that idea of like somebody that's just so polar opposite of you, but shares some similarities. They both had family problems in their background. Wood has, an amputated leg. Wisnett apparently has to walk with a cane. And so there's these odd things that just kind of parallel, and it's fascinating.
Well, it was a really good blend of knowing when to be funny, knowing when to have a laugh at it because of the situation, but also knowing when to tell people, hey, listen, yeah, that was funny what we just showed you, but let's keep in mind there's other things going on here that cause a situation. I mean, I watched this film twice in the last 48 hours because we had 2 screenings of it back-to-back nights.
Right.
And I was waiting for the moment where early in the film, they're detailing the fact that what John Wood did when he was in a plane crash, and that's what caused him to lose his leg. But he wanted to keep the leg. So all the machinations he went through of like working with people to try to preserve the leg and try to keep it and get it. And he wanted to use it as a memorial and all this. And of course, everybody's laughing in the audience, rightfully so, because it is played for, hey, look at this. This is kind of crazy. The guy had his own leg and he had somebody at the Hardee's and Maiden put it in their freezer for a little while to try to keep it. And of course, that didn't work out too well. And, it's funny.
Right.
But then the filmmakers do the really nice move of saying, okay, yep, that was really funny. All right, but let's tell you more about this plane crash.
Right.
And as you start getting into the plane crash, you're like, oh my gosh, it wasn't just he was on a joyride and crashed and lost part of his leg. He lost his father. I mean, and it was a traumatic situation and it was really tough. Once you start getting all that information in the background, and the same thing happens with Shannon, you get a little bit of that same background information with him too. That's to me what really makes this a really interesting documentary and not just a compilation of news footage about a really crazy story. You were asking about the stereotyping and how people view the South or view some of this culture.
Sure.
The fact of the matter is, once you get deeper into the story, we're really only focusing on 2 people that were making some really ridiculous decisions.
Sure.
Okay. Everybody else around them, very strong people, sound decisions in most situations or reasons for the decisions they're making, choosing to support or not support these 2, and having very logical reasons for doing it. I actually admired everybody else in the film that was featured. Mm-hmm. The mother of John Wood, I thought was a really interesting character. They kind of paint her in one light early on, but then you start to really get an understanding of where she's coming from.
Sure.
You start to sympathize with her. Shannon's wife, the very first time we meet her, it's a very a little more comical, a little more, oh gosh, look at his wife type of thing. But then you get to know her and it's like, okay, wow, she's got a lot going on right now too. And she's really working hard to deal with the situation. I think the sister, John Wood's sister, was a really strong woman character in the film. And again, I think when you get to the end of the film, there's no Southern stereotype that anybody would look at this and say it's a bunch of dumb idiots in this story. Right. You could say that maybe about the two protagonists to some degree still, the choices they made. But I don't think there's any way you could say it about the other people around them at all. So, and really at that point, you forget about it being in the South. And it's really just, these are two people that could be anywhere in the world. Shannon Wisnet could be anywhere. Sure. John Wood could be anywhere. And they could have done this exact same thing. Doesn't matter. The South was just happened to be where it was. And
I was impressed too, where it delved into family. And that's something that I didn't kind of expect. And, families supporting people, maybe casting them out because they're having problems and the person is not straightening themselves out and having to deal with the repercussions of that. And it was a lot more about both families, Wood's family and Wisnet's family, and supporting and maybe not supporting. And it just was a lot deeper than you would expect on the surface. So
Absolutely.
It's a nice
and
surprise.
another thing I thought was interesting too, and a reason why I don't think that this is an automatic indictment of the Southern culture or anybody around it, is that every single person that was featured in this film outside of Shannon and John looked at this situation and commented about how ridiculous the situation was. The newscasters, every bit of newscasting that was on there, it was just, okay, can we really believe this is what's going on? So it wasn't like everybody just was all up in it and loving it.
And family members as well would be like, oh, even of the family members of the person they were talking about, they would comment, Wood's family would comment on Wood and be like, oh, roll their eyes. But they would roll their eyes about Wisnet same way. That both families were just kind of, like you're saying, they were addressing the situation head on and saying it's ridiculous.
If anything, I think actually somewhere in the film that, or in the documentary where somebody kind of looks bad and doesn't really get redeemed very much is I think the producers of the reality show late in the film that kind of use Shannon and, you could argue we learned that Shannon Wisnet is just someone who really wants to be on TV. He really wants to be a star. He wants people to know him. He wants people to recognize him. So he does get invited to play a part in a reality show. Now, granted, Shannon, I'm sure, probably played it up a lot bigger in his head of what it was going to be and had a lot more of an idea.
Right.
I do feel like they showed that the TV producers were kind of using him for a little bit of a laugh, and it was a very small moment in the show, and it really upset Shannon Wisnet. So he was very disappointed in the whole situation. So I think the TV producers get a little bit of the slight. I think the TV judge in the situation a little bit gets slighted. So it's almost like, even though we're meant to kind of think at the beginning that we're going to make fun of these Southern people, it's actually these media, TV people and all that actually kind of come out looking a little slighted at some points too.
Well, and yes, I think that's a strength of the documentary. Agreed. Is that, you go in thinking it's going to put these two people under a microscope and make them look stupid, and we're going to laugh at that. What it does is, yes, it shows them, but it also focuses on family, but also focuses on media, the reality show, and then also the reality court show. And both of those, it kind of says which, the public at large watches, and what does that say about what you want to see about people and what you're, That all being said, not that we're not going to spoil anything, but what happens because of the interaction with the court TV show?
Oh no,
I found
the after effect was really
surprising, and it actually kind of turned an assumption that you would have on its head a little bit.
No, I agree, and I was gonna actually come back and follow up on my comment and say that but it's not all negative that's perceived there. The problem is that, and gosh, we can get so philosophical with this documentary, which is so interesting to think. Yeah. It's really showing. I mean, I've commented many times before that I'm afraid our society is one that it's encouraging everybody to think that they can be funny and famous. That's our society right now. Everybody, I say everybody in a very generic term. So many people in our society feel like that because of the entertainment options available, that everybody can be funny, everybody can be famous, everybody can get attention, like at a high level. And Shannon Wisnet is the personification of that. And to see how it actually affects him when he doesn't get that level of fame, it's really sad. I mean, it's really, you see the impact of it. You see what people who are led their entire life to believe that they could become a big famous movie star or a comedian or a TV personality, and they don't get to. How troubling that is, and how it can actually take a toll on someone. But yet we have these reality shows, and we have this media and all that are actually encouraging us to say, oh yeah, you can be a star. Oh, you can come on the Jerry Springer show and be a crazy guy and have everybody pay attention to you. We're giving you all these opportunities to do it. But in the end, it's not really a satisfying situation, and it does leave some people scarred behind. I thought that whole part of it was amazing. There was a moment in the film, I think that I actually got a little emotional. A couple moments in the film was pretty impressive. But there was a moment where Shannon was talking about after the Judge Mathis show appearance, where they finally got a ruling done on who owned this foot. And he left the courtroom, and he was describing the feeling when he actually had media surrounding him, taking photographs, asking him questions. He got choked up, and he just said, that's a moment I'll never forget.
Right.
And all it was I had a crowd of people surrounding me wanting to talk to me and wanting to put me on camera. Mm-hmm. Granted, they were all probably doing it to showcase the ridiculousness of the situation and the claim and this character. He didn't care. Right. He just loved the fact that people were paying attention to him.
Yeah.
And man, that moment was just made this a whole deeper level documentary than just, two country bumpkins fight over a severed foot and that they kept in a smoker grill. That's what I thought was really impressive about it. I really, really did like this film a lot.
Yeah, I liked it a lot too. And several people in the audience commented, I had no interest in seeing this film. Yeah. I had heard a little bit about it. I'd seen the movie poster, saw that, I just was like, no. But I came tonight, I gave it a chance, and I'm so glad I did. And I also liked it, and I'd recommend to our listeners, if you're the slightest bit interested, seek it out. So it is on iTunes. It
is on iTunes. And a lot of people ask me, did you actually get to see the foot in the film? And yes, you do, in a few scenes. It's not overplayed, which I think was nice, and it was kind of a build-up. It was almost the Jaws thing where you didn't really see the shark until close to the end of the film, where you didn't see the foot until the end either. Right. But it's, at its core, yes, it is on the surface a very funny situation, ridiculous situation that you're going to find yourself laughing about more than not. But I love what we're talking about here, and why I think we both connected with the film is that much, much deeper base of what's going on family-wise, human nature, characters, everything. It's a really, really good film.
I agree.
Awesome. So that's Finders Keepers. I know it had a very limited theater run, made some film festival circuits. More than anything, you can get it online. I know it's on Apple iTunes. I would imagine probably Amazon and other places you could get the film as well. We do think if you're at all a fan of documentaries or have any passing interest in the topic, yes, it is worth checking out to go see. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got a couple news items to go through and talk about some movie-related industry news, and then we'll wrap up the show with our recommendation for the episode. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with Footcandle Films.
When you need a dose of entertainment chatter or just a good laugh, be sure to check out Chick Chat on the Mesh. It's girls talking about stuff, girls want to talk about. Celebrities, gossip, fads, boys. It's kind of the guilty pleasure of the Mesh Network. Here's a little taste of what you can expect.
But you know what I always thought was really exciting? Is at the beginning of a new season when the montage would change and the people were like older or they had something new.
Like when you got new Becky on Roseanne.
Yes. That's an example.
Perfect example. You need to know. You can't just start shows and then new people are on there and you're thinking, what I needed the montage.
What about on 90210? Okay, that 90210, it changed every season,
It did.
And then they had the beach summer one where
they worked at the country club?
Yes. And the opening credits had them like wearing bikinis and stuff. And then another one would be like when they're just in that white room and on chairs that swivel around.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So it's all...
Even Baywatch, when they changed lifeguards.
Absolutely.
They had new people running down the beach in red bikinis, but you knew they're a new lifeguard. I need to get invested in that.
So come have a listen to Chick Chat on themesh.tv. You know you want to.
Hello and welcome back to Footcandle Films here on themesh.tv. I'm Alan. He's Chris.
Yes.
And we just finished our reviews of Bridge of Spies and Finders Keepers, both films with positive reviews from us. Sounds like we were both really enamored, though, with Finders Keepers. Bridge of Spies, It was fine. It was a good film. It's worth seeing. Finders Keepers we're definitely recommending, though, however. Chris, we always like to talk a little bit of movie news. You know, we're not industry pundits.
Right.
We're not going to give this really critical analysis of films that are being made and all that. But we're fascinated by the idea of what films are coming out soon, which ones certain filmmakers are working on. And here's the time that we're recording this. This is mid-November. This is getting into the main big season of our year, the big Oscar season.
Sure.
This is like our playoff season, okay, for NFL. This is where the films are being bottled up and released, and they have to be released in some capacity by December 31st to be eligible for the Academy Award nominations that come out in late January, maybe?
Right.
Somewhere in there. And then you have the ceremony in late February or so. So we have a lot of releases coming up the next few weeks. Here's what I thought would be interesting. I was just scanning through this list last night and said, wow, there's some really interesting films coming out in the next 60 days. I'm going to hit some of these really quick, and I just want to give some quick responses from both of us. Are we interested? Do we think it's going to be worthy of anything going on, or what's the backstory on it? Okay. So we have. I know you were not a big fan at all of This Is the End, which was Seth Rogen, Jonah Hill, that whole crew. Well, the interview we talked about as well. Mm-hmm. I think you liked the interview better than This Is the End.
I did.
Okay. I thought it was fine,
actually
too.
liked it.
Yeah, you liked
as opposed to,
Well, that same, I mean, they kind of tout it as that same production crew doing a film called The Night Before. And this is Seth Rogen, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and then Anthony Mackie doing a comedy, a Christmas-related comedy. I already see you shaking your head. So no interest?
Not really. I mean, Joseph Gordon-Levitt could make me go see it, but I've got to hear, like, really high reviews of that. Otherwise, I'm planning on skipping it.
Yeah, I don't have much interest in it either. But again, if I hear a lot of people saying it was really funny, which is what happened with This Is the End. I had no interest in seeing it. A lot of people tell me it's funny. And you were not one of those people, but everybody else was telling me it was funny. I went to go see it. I did think it was very funny.
Oh, man.
You told me it wasn't, and you were wrong, but that's okay. The Secret in Their Eyes. Did you see the original foreign version of this film?
No.
Okay, I have not either.
Okay.
The Secret in Their Eyes, starring Chiwetel Ejiofor and Julia Roberts, is a remake of a film.
Oh, man. You talk about a film I couldn't be less interested to see and hope that it doesn't get good reviews because I really don't want to have to see it. It's this film.
Really?
It just seems like grueling subject matter and not, in general, I go to the movies to be entertained like most people do. Sometimes it's to be challenged. But this movie, just like, why would I want to subject myself to it? It'd be like me going on a really fast roller coaster at an amusement park. Why would I do that? I don't like roller coasters. Why would I subject myself to that? That's what this film seems like. It just seems like unpleasantness from the get-go. It reminds me actually a lot of that movie Prisoners that we reviewed because we'd heard a lot of interesting things about it. It had a great cast. Mm-hmm. And I admit that it was well made, and it wasn't, but it was still had a lot of very uncomfortable scenes that were involving like torture and all this kind of stuff that was just very unpleasant. That's what this movie looks to be. Yeah, I couldn't be less interested in seeing this movie.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I don't have an opinion on it. I'm actually more interested now that they've made this adaptation. I want to go back and see the Argentinian film, the 2010 version, because obviously I remember hearing some really good reviews about that film. Obviously, it's good enough that somebody in Hollywood said, "Ooh, we ought to remake that." So I actually want to go see the Argentinian film. Could care less about the American version, though. One thing I thought that was just interesting is you do have the writer and director of the film. Actually, the director, his name is Billy Ray, which, how interesting is that? We have some connections there. He did Breach and he did Shattered Glass in the last 15 years or so.
Okay, I haven't seen Breach, but I have seen Shattered Glass.
Yeah.
So.
And he's a writer. He's written a lot of films. He wrote Captain Phillips' screenplay. He wrote State of Play, Flight Plan, Suspect Zero, Shattered Glass, The Hunger Games. He wrote the screenplay for the first Hunger Games movie. So there's some cred behind it, and obviously a lot of good big name actors in it. But I agree with you; it does look pretty traumatic.
If anything, I would be interested, like you said, to go check out the original Argentinian version because there again, I could be completely off base. But a lot of times, foreign films, maybe because they don't have the budget, or I wonder if it would be quite as dark and quite as intense and quite as in your face, and it'd be more of kind of like, here's a story. And I think I may gravitate to seeing that version as opposed to what just seems like a really amped up dose of unpleasantness.
The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2.
Nope.
See, I haven't seen the last
0
one.
for 3.
You haven't seen them?
No, I'm saying 0 for 3 so far on the movie.
Oh, well,
this being the third one that
I just never saw. I think I saw Catching Fire. Didn't really do anything for me.
But you didn't see Hunger Games, the first one?
I did see the first one.
Okay.
Which I thought the first one was good.
Okay.
I liked the first one.
Sure.
The second one, I know you've got to get deeper into the mythology, and I just wasn't really interested in getting into it. Haven't seen Mockingjay Part 1. I'll catch up with it someday, but I'm not going to be running out to the theater to see it.
Yeah, I don't have... Someday I will be proven wrong on this. I know it's going to happen, and I'll have to eat my words. I really dislike the concept of taking a book and splitting it up into 15 million movies.
Yeah.
Didn't like it when they did it. I didn't like it when they did it to the Return of the King. Did they split Return of the King up or no? No, they didn't. They kept that one. But it was The Hobbit where they split one book up into like 8 million movies.
Yeah.
Dumb. When they did that, of course, I don't really care about Twilight because I haven't seen it, so it doesn't matter.
They did Harry Potter.
Harry Potter, that bothered me. Hunger Games, just an abuse of power. So, I mean, they should not have done that. So I really have little or no... I've seen all of them, but, I mean, they could have easily wrapped it up in the last movie, but instead they split it. Just dumb. So, no, I'm not going for that either.
We're not really doing too good with any of these films coming up. Okay, we're getting into late November, early December.
Will you break your code? Because coming up December 18th is something that...
Well, we'll get there in a moment.
Okay.
The Good Dinosaur, the new Pixar film coming out November 25th. You're shaking your head again. Nothing,
careless.
Nothing at all.
Nope.
I got to admit...
I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Because that's the kind of thing with something like Inside Out. I was kind of like, I have no interest. Went and saw it, and I liked it. So I'm hoping that it's one of those where I'm pleasantly surprised. But
Victor Frankenstein. This is James McAvoy, Daniel Radcliffe.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and say it for a record. I love anytime they dig out the classic monster movies and try to do a new spin on it, but this does not look good.
No, and I think it's but I heard about it.
It's the heavy CGI use, I think, is what just upset me.
Which has a count against it. Of all the ones you've mentioned so far, this is the one I'm slightly interested in because I'm hoping the trailer is just poorly edited and they're marketing it poorly. Mm-hmm. Because I like the two actors, and I think there is possibility for something interesting there. They're kind of doing a reboot type idea of the Frankenstein story, and they're kind of once upon a timing it where they kind of add some nuance to it. It seems interesting, but it's probably not going to be good.
All I can think back is what was the film that came out? Was it I, Frankenstein?
Yes.
Yeah, where they try to put this new modern spin on the story. It's just
didn't work.
And I'm sorry, the movie poster for Victor Frankenstein is looking like pretty boy poses of Victor Frankenstein and Igor, and I'm just like, that's not what I want. So,
yeah.
All right, so I'm still nothing is really striking my interest now.
So you're 0-4. I'm 0-3.5.
Yeah,
I'm kind of half interested.
All right, November 25th. So basically, right around Thanksgiving, we've got Creed. This is the Rocky spinoff in a way. We actually found out it's Apollo Creed's son, played by Michael B. Jordan. Sylvester Stallone is in the film as Rocky Balboa. I'll go ahead and say for the record, I want to see this.
Did Sylvester Stallone, other than being in it, is he directing it?
No.
Is he writing it?
No. Ryan Coogler, who did Fruitvale Station, is directing the film.
I think it has. I liked Fruitvale Station. Yep. I like Michael B. Jordan. Mm-hmm. I'm interested.
I love the sports underdog storyline of things, and this one, all the trailers look to be a very real life depiction of the story instead of the heightened Rocky 3, 4, 5 that we got of the superhero boxer type of thing.
Sure.
I want something real. I want something authentic. And what I'm seeing so far looks really, really good.
I think it'll be an okay movie. The question is, can they make it? It'll be a good movie. Can they make it a great movie?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
The potential is there.
I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. There's a lot of little other films I've probably never heard of and ones that probably won't come to anybody's theater near them.
Okay.
But skipping ahead to December 11th, we've got In the Heart of the Sea. Have you heard of this with Chris Hemsworth? It's a Ron Howard film, and it is basically the real-life story that led to Melville writing Moby Dick. So it's the winter of 1820. New England whaling ship was assaulted by a giant mammoth whale. It's the story that will inspire Herman Melville's Moby Dick. So I've seen the trailers. It does look to be a big oceanic spectacle film. I'm curious. I'm not, I have to wait and hear if it's a good film or not to go out and see it, but I'm curious.
I can't dislike it more than I like the book Moby Dick. So that being said, because I really hated that book when I read it.
Well, that's probably not helping that much. So,
but I do like Chris Hemsworth. I have not seen Vacation, which came out this year, which was apparently an abomination. But I liked him in Rush. Was that the name of the
Rush was good.
movie?
And that was a Ron Howard film too.
Okay, I liked him in that. I like him in the Avengers movies as Thor. I like, so I don't know. I like him. It's enough there that it's an interesting that they're bothering to make it. So.
What I'm curious about is I really like Master and Commander, the Russell Crowe film from quite a few years ago, and I got a little bit of that feel, this classic oceanic giant ship epic film, and I loved Master and Commander, and I thought, well, okay, if I get anything the same kind of feel from this, and Ron Howard, he's got good films in him. He's also made some really bad films. So it just kind of depends which one shows up for this film.
Sure.
But I do think Rush, if he can match that same authenticity level that he did with Rush and both the energy level of the film, then it could be a good film.
See, I remember thinking Master and Commander was like reading the phone book, but maybe not.
No, it's a good film. You're wrong. Sorry.
I'll have to get back and
you need to go back and fix that. It's a good film.
Okay.
Okay, so now we come to the big day, the one everybody's talking about, the one everybody's excited about. So much enthusiasm for this film. December 18th.
There we go.
Here it is. Alvin and the Chipmunks, The Road Chip.
Yes. That's the third or fourth movie.
I have no idea. I didn't know they were still making these films. Actually, me pulling it up on my mobile phone right now, this is the first time I'm aware that they're making another Alvin and the Chipmunks movie. Man. All right, obviously I'm joking about that. Obviously we have Star Wars Episode 7. I don't even think we need to go into it. We've already decreed on this show that we're not going to go into any news rumors. Every time I go to a movie news site, Chris, I keep getting hit over the head with a headline saying, new commercial out with new footage. And I'm like, nope. So I have not honestly seen anything in like the last month or so about this film. I'm so excited. But
I'm also excited, and I have not watched any trailer. I didn't even watch the new trailer that came out a while ago before the recent set of new trailer. I haven't seen any since the original teaser trailer.
Wow.
But unfortunately, I think I saw a passing thing that may have ruined something for me. So, dang it.
So let me ask you about Christmas Day.
Okay.
Because here's the thing I'm fascinated by. This is going to be the last date we talk about because we get to December 31st.
Okay.
I started looking at the list of films coming out Christmas Day, December 25th, and I'm amazed at this day. All right, listen to this.
Okay.
You have the latest David O. Russell film, Joy.
Yep.
With Jennifer Lawrence, Robert De Niro, and Bradley Cooper.
And Bradley Cooper, two of his recurring cast people. Yeah.
You have Concussion with Will Smith.
Right.
Which I think will be an interesting film simply because of the subject matter and the fact that it's basically pointing a lot of fingers at the NFL as an entity, which is interesting to me.
Sure.
We have The Revenant, which is Leonardo DiCaprio and
from your director, Mr. Inarritu.
The Inarritu, for which I think the trailer on it's really fascinating and intense. I'm anxious to see it. We've got the Point Break remake with Edgar Ramirez.
You could call it Point Blank. That's fine.
Point Blank.
That's fine.
We have a Will Ferrell comedy with Mark Wahlberg called Daddy's Home, which I will say the last time these two were together in a comedy, which was The Other Guys, I thought was really funny. I've seen the trailers for Daddy's Home. Looks pretty funny. Who knows? And then we've got Tarantino's The Hateful Eight, all coming out Christmas Day.
I know which one I'm going to try.
Well, I was going to say, I don't even need to ask you which of those 5 or 6 movies that you would be beelining it to the movie theater to see. And of course, it's Concussion. No, it's The Hateful Eight.
Absolutely.
Tarantino. I'm with you on that. That's probably my favorite. Although I'm going to say Joy is also right up there, just simply because I've been such a big fan of Russell's films since, I really like Silver Linings Playbook. I really liked American Hustle.
You like Flirting with Disaster.
I did like Flirting with Disaster. Three Kings is the one I need to go back and watch again. I remember watching it and thinking it was fine, but I didn't really get connected with it.
Mm-hmm. How about I Heart Huckabees?
I do like that film too.
That is my absolute favorite of his.
So, he's batting close to 100% for me on films. So I just think this looks really good as well. So I'm excited to see Joy. Not as much as Hateful Eight. If you told me I could only buy one ticket Christmas Day, which is it going to be? I'm going to go see the Tarantino film. But you gave me 2 tickets. I'll go see Joy right afterwards. Concussion, I'm interested in simply because I think it's ballsy of them to go after the NFL like they are. The Revenant, I am very, very interested in, but I know it's not going to be here probably in Hickory on Christmas Day, so I'll have to wait a little while to see it. Daddy's Home, I can wait till it comes out on video, DVD, or Netflix or whatever.
Right.
And Point Break, nah, don't need it. So overall, it should be an interesting Christmas day.
Yeah.
The problem is that, Chris, our family normally likes to go out on Christmas afternoon, Christmas Day, and go see a movie. I can't take my kids to any of these movies.
No, I don't think Hateful Eight's probably.
I mean, Concussion is the only one that's PG-13, and I don't really think my kids are. I don't think that's quite the feel-good Christmas Day movie that we as the kids want to go out and see. So.
Well, just let them see Star Wars again, and you go see Hateful Eight.
That's really good. Really, that's it for this calendar year as far as films go right now. Now, here's the interesting thing. I didn't mention the Danish Girl, which is also coming out. We've also got Macbeth with Fassbender. There's a couple in there that, are Oscar buzz films, but really there's not that many. So I'm really curious what the Oscar makeup's going to look like at the end of the year.
So Carol doesn't come out on Christmas Day?
No.
Okay.
I'm sure it's going to be limited release before the end of the year, so it gets in for Oscar season, but it's not going to be playing in a lot of places before then. All right, you had a movie news item as well, right?
Yes. So Spectre, the latest James Bond movie.
I've heard of it.
Yeah. It set a world record, a Guinness World Record for the biggest movie explosion. On location.
Biggest movie explosion, yes.
Biggest movie explosion. You probably can pinpoint the point in the film because you've seen it. In Morocco, shot on location, demanded 2,224 gallons of fuel and 73 pounds of explosives.
Yes.
Okay? So is that all that's notable about this movie? You've seen it. Has a really big explosion. Got a Guinness record for it. But, I've heard some negative stuff about it.
I will say the explosion was pretty impressive.
Okay,
I will give it that.
All 2,000 pounds. Okay.
It was impressive. It was one of those where when you see it start to happen, because I had no idea anything about it when I saw the film.
I'm going to be looking for it if I go see the movie now.
But I had no idea. I didn't expect it at all. And when it actually took place, it is a little bit of that moment of, ooh, wow, that was pretty big.
So something, if you're into things blowing up, you should see this in the theater because it's very impressive.
Yeah, go to the big D giant screen and go watch the world's biggest film explosion happen.
I mean, it got a Guinness record, so
yeah.
Okay.
But can I jump format here a little bit and lead right into my recommendations?
Absolutely.
Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Because I feel like I kind of need to defend this film a little bit.
Okay. Spectre, it's been kind of ragged.
Spectre is my recommendation, and I know it's in theaters. It's not one you can see online right now and all, but that kind of breaks with format a little bit.
That's 2 in a row because Crimson Peak was the same way, Mr. Jones.
Problem is I haven't seen as many films at home online lately. I've been in the movie theater a lot more than not.
Got you.
I'm going to say Spectre. I hate that it's getting some of the negative buzz it is. Is it as good as Skyfall? Not really. It's a little notch below. But is it a good James Bond film? Absolutely. It's a great James Bond film. Daniel Craig, people are complaining that he looks bored in the film. I would say he looks bored in all the films he's been in as James Bond. I thought he looked bored in Casino Royale, but it's a little bit of that cool James Bond exterior that he's putting on.
Gotcha.
It's no different. I just think people now are starting to be a little more critical and be like, oh, he just doesn't look like he wants to be there. Well, he's pretty much said I think he's done with James Bond. But I mean, he doesn't act any different than he did in the other 3 films.
Gotcha.
This one I will say.
Christoph Waltz?
Christoph Waltz was good. He's fine. He's in the movie very little.
Oh.
A lot smaller amount than I would have liked. But it was effective, and I think it worked. People complain that it's a little more like the old cheesy James Bond film. It had more of those elements. Yeah, it does. It's the closest of the Daniel Craig movies to the old classic Bond films.
Okay.
You have a big shadowy organization. You've got a mastermind over that organization. James Bond at one point gets put into a physical trap where he is being taunted by the villain and something is going to happen ridiculous to his body based on what the villain's going to do to him. And it's this slow, torturous thing that is straight out of Goldfinger and other 60s James Bond films. It was fine. I mean, it was fun. It was probably the least serious of the Daniel Craig films. It definitely had more tongue-in-cheek at the end. A couple of situations that were absolutely ridiculous and over the top. But I also went back and watched some of the opening scenes of some of the old 70s and early 80s Roger Moore ones, and those were absolutely ludicrous.
Okay.
So you know what? If you like James Bond classically, you like the 30, 40 years we've had of Bond films, I think this is a good entry.
Okay.
I would say of the Daniel Craig films, my favorite is still Casino Royale, the first one. I thought that was just a masterfully done Bond film.
No one likes Quantum of Solace.
No, that's my least favorite.
Sure.
Casino Royale, Skyfall I like a little bit better than Spectre. Spectre shortly after, and then there's a big gap down to Quantum of Solace.
Gotcha.
Overall, though, I think people are going in and they're ready to pick it apart now.
Gotcha.
You know, you've hit your popularity peak with Skyfall. That was like the biggest James Bond film ever.
Mm-hmm.
Now you got the darts throwing at it, and it's on its way down. And Daniel Craig didn't really do many favors by doing a lot of TV interviews talking about how he's kind of tired of playing James Bond, thinks he's a chauvinist and all that. That's going to just start putting little daggers in people's pockets to say, oh, yeah, so if he's ragging on the film and character, we can do it too.
Sure.
So it's fine. It's a good film. It's fun. It's my kids enjoyed it. You know, the only thing they said afterwards is it was a lot like Mission Impossible. I'm like, yes, it was. There were a lot of plot points very similar to Mission Impossible 5.
That's kind of what I was thinking. When we reviewed Rogue Nation earlier this year, I wasn't that big on it. And I was like, you know, not that I'm a huge fan of either James Bond or Mission Impossible, but I think what they're doing with the James Bond thing, I'll be more interested in. So do you actually think, and maybe I will when I finally see Spectre, do you think it hurt this film to be released within the same year, so close to Mission Impossible? A little bit, because there are a lot of similarities to it. And even plot points and certain set pieces are very similar. So I do think it probably hurt. Okay. But I'm saying, you know, don't buy all the online critics and people saying it's not that good. It's a fine James Bond film. It's better than average. I think it was good. And if this is the last one Daniel Craig's doing, I think it was a pretty good send-off. So it's okay. Good. What's your recommendation for us? Well, unfortunately, I'm also going to recommend something that is not easily available online unless you happen to be an HBO subscriber or
somebody with an
or
HBO
know somebody who does, and can use HBO Go. I finally got to see Cobain Montage of Heck, which is
the Kurt Cobain documentary.
Yes, and I have been anticipating this thing for a long time since I think it premiered at Tribeca, maybe. Mm-hmm. But still am a big Nirvana fan. I really like their music, and I was curious because I'd heard that the documentary was very interesting in that it basically took pages of his journal, lots of pages of his journals, and animated them and like used the words and basically made his journals come to life so you could try to get inside the mind, although that sounds horribly cheesy, of Kurt Cobain. And I feel like they did do that, and it was very effective. They had really in-depth interviews with Courtney Love, his wife, Chris Novoselic, who was the other band member of Nirvana, with his mom, with Kurt Cobain's mom, and with Kurt Cobain's sister. And, you know, lots of different people, and they talked at length about things, and they showed family photos of Kurt Cobain at, like, age 2, you know, all this stuff, and, like, slowly ramped up. This documentary is it's almost 2.5 hours long.
Wow.
So it is very expansive.
But it goes pretty deep and a lot of good details and a lot of good...
Yeah, it gives a lot of good details, and it's just, you feel like you have seen his entire lifespan, and I feel like they did a really good job covering it, so much so that I hope they never, and you wouldn't think I would say this, I hope they never, ever, ever make a dramatization of the life of Kurt Cobain, because there's no way it can be as good as this documentary, because the documentary was just amazing. That's and they great. They have access to, you know, it's the benefit of somebody who was a good musician, who was very creative, and there was a lot of documentation because of things like MTV and because of this stuff that they had lots of career spanning footage. So they had a wealth of stuff to use, and they did, and they used it to great effect. And if you're a fan of Nirvana at all, I would highly recommend the documentary.
Very cool.
I will say, you know, unfortunately, we all know he committed suicide, so it's pretty much a downer. Yeah. But it does give you an insight into what made him the person he was. Yeah, so.
It's definitely on my watch list right now. So I've been looking forward to seeing it. So been pretty impressed with some of the documentaries that HBO has been floating around lately. So I know we've talked about Going Clear before as well, and they're doing some good stuff. So I definitely I started my HBO Now account mainly to be able to get to some of those films, and looking forward to seeing it. So Spectre and Kurt Cobain Montage of Heck are the two recommendations for this episode. Of course, we did Bridge of Spies, Finders Keepers, recommendations on both of those as well. Some other films that are coming out in the next 60 days from the time this was recorded. Of course, if you're listening to this episode after December 31st, all that will be, you can look at it, you can listen to it and say, boy, were they wrong about that one?
Right.
Or, yeah,
that was amazing.
Sure right on that.
Right.
So you have the little bit of that benefit of retroactively evaluating what we said. And then we talked, of course, about Spectre's big explosion, so which is pretty big. I think it's already on online YouTube, so you can watch it without seeing the movie.
Okay.
I know, it's disappointing, but
it is.
If you really don't want to pay $9 to go see the big explosion, just pop online, do a Google search. I'm sure you could find it. So with that, we're going to wrap up the show. As a reminder to everybody, we are on themesh.tv, so that's where you can go to find old episodes and subscribe to our show and all that good stuff. And then if somebody is just burning with a question or comment or feedback, where can they go to reach us?
You can reach us by jotting off an email to info@themesh.tv and just tag it as Footcandle and let us know what you did or did not like about our reviews. You can also leave us reviews on Apple iTunes, where they carry all of our podcasts. Going to mention real quick, it's a little bit of crossover synergy with one of the other podcasts on the Mesh, the Entrepreneur Exchange. They're going to be doing an episode where they're doing like a holiday movie preview or suggestions of holiday movies, not the ones that are in the theaters, but just of movies you might want to throw in
the annual Entrepreneur movie extravaganza.
There we go.
Yeah.
And I believe it's
like a tradition now.
It's the third annual. It's the first time I've been on the show. You've been on the show once before or twice before maybe. But I'm actually going to be on there with Alan and with the host, and we're all going to talk movies. So that episode will be coming up shortly.
Absolutely.
So be on the lookout for it.
Crossovers.
Yes.
Just like in the old 80s sitcoms where you had the Facts of Life girls showing up in different strokes or something like that. That's what we're doing here. So that's going to be fun. All right, so that is our episode today. Thanks for listening, and remember to subscribe and give us some feedback. We'd love to hear from you. And until next time, take care. We'll speak to you again.
See you in the ticket line.
Special thanks to Carpal Tuller for the show theme music. For more about Carpal Tuller, visit www.carpaltuller.com. You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.